In New York City, the cheapest apartment can cost you your privacy. The most expensive one can cost you the idea of home. 8 million people live here, all fighting for the same thing, a place to stay. The vacancy rate is 1.4%, the lowest since 1968, which means for every apartment that opens up, dozens of people want it. In that kind of city, where you live doesn't just describe your address. It describes who you are, what you've survived, and what you've given up to stay. This is what New York housing actually looks like, from the bottom to the top. At every level, it costs you something different. Each level solves one housing problem by creating another. Level 1, the Dreamer. Shared room / partitioned living room. $800 to $1,600 per month. Entry at the cost of privacy. This is where New York begins for most people who come here with nothing but a reason. The apartment is not really an apartment. It is a room inside someone else's. Sometimes a bedroom, sometimes a former living room split by a partial wall. You can hear everything on the other side. You are heard in everything. Privacy is not a feature this level offers. It is the thing this level costs. A growing share of shared rentals in New York now advertise rooms carved out of former living spaces, proof that even common ground has become rentable. When the city runs out of room, it takes the room that belonged to everyone and turns it into rent. The person here may have arrived from Ohio, India, or Alabama. The suitcase is still on the floor. The window shows a brick wall. What they hold in their hand is not quite their own key. It is a copy of someone else's. That distinction matters more than it sounds. This is not just poverty. It is the price of access. New York has been charging it for over a century. Level 1 solves the problem of getting into New York. It does it by making you invisible inside it. But surviving New York and living in it are two different things. Level 2 is where you start to live in it. Alone, barely, but alone. Level 2, the Grinder. Railroad walk-up studio, $2,300 to $4,000 per month. Affordability at the cost of separation. A railroad apartment has no hallway. Rooms open directly into each other. A design from the tenement era when space efficiency mattered more than privacy. To reach the kitchen, you walk through the bedroom. Most of these buildings have no elevator. 4 flights up with groceries becomes a daily negotiation with the city. The key sticks in the old lock, and you learn to turn it at exactly the right angle. You know the door. The door knows you. New York sells inconvenience as character. High ceilings, hardwood floors. A walk-up in the East Village becomes desirable not despite its awkwardness, but because of it. The city takes a design limitation from 1890 and markets it as authenticity in 2025. The upfront cost of a broker fee rental in New York runs close to $13,000. First month, security deposit. Broker fee. The barrier is not just the monthly number. It is clearing the threshold in the first place. Level 2 solves the problem of living alone. It does it by making separation architecturally impossible and entry financially brutal. But at some point, the floor plan stops being personality and starts being a problem. Level 3 is where the city tried to fix that. Level 3, the Manhattan Renter. Micro studio, costing $2,500 to $3,500 per month. Solo living at the cost of space. New York City had to change its own laws to make this apartment exist. Carmel Place opened in 2016 as the city's first officially zoned micro-apartment building. Units ranged from 260 to 360 square feet. To allow them, the city waived its own minimum size requirements. The program was called Adapt NYC. The name said everything. Early rents ran around $2,500 to $2,800 for a space smaller than some parking garages. The design solution is psychological. Higher ceilings, large windows, furniture that folds away. The city shrinks the private space, then sells back the feeling of space through architecture. You are not living in a small home. You are living in a precisely engineered compression of one. The person at this level knows exactly how many steps it takes to cross their apartment. They have counted. The key is finally yours. The problem is that it opens almost nothing. Level 3 solves the problem of affording solo life in Manhattan. It does it by shrinking the legal definition of what a life-sized home needs to be. But somewhere in New York's history, a different group found another solution. They didn't wait for the city to rewrite the rules. They broke them. Level 4, the comfortable, converted loft. $4,000 to $12,000 plus per month. Space and myth at the cost of who gets to stay. A city planning study from the late 1970s found that 91.5% of Manhattan loft conversions were illegal. Nearly half were occupied by artists, people who moved into former manufacturing buildings because the spaces were vast, the rents were negligible, and the city had no immediate use for empty factories. They had keys to buildings that were never meant to be homes. That was the point. The city could not ignore them. In 1982, New York passed the Loft law, building a legal framework around a mistake it could not evict. The raw brick walls that once meant unregulated live work compromise became designer authenticity. The open floor plan that existed because nobody could afford interior walls became a $10,000 a month aesthetic. The artists who created the cultural value that made these buildings desirable were priced out by the value they created. The loft is gentrification in costume. It dresses like rebellion. It cashes out as prestige. Level 4 solves the problem of needing real space in a compressed city. It does it by beginning a cycle the original occupants could never afford to finish. But in New York, the most powerful apartment is not always the most expensive one. Sometimes, it is the one with a number the landlord is legally prohibited from changing. Level 5, the protected, rent-stabilized unit, $1,200 to $3,000 per month. Stability at the cost of ever feeling free to leave. This level breaks the price ladder. That is the entire point. Nearly 1 million apartments in New York City are rent-stabilized. From the outside, they look ordinary. Old, small, sometimes in buildings that have not been updated in decades. The value is invisible until you understand what surrounds them. In a city with a 1.4% vacancy rate, a stabilized apartment is not simply cheaper than market rate. It is permanent in a city built around impermanence. A landlord cannot price you out when the neighborhood changes, cannot use the market to remove you when your block becomes desirable. People pass these apartments through families. People refuse to leave them even when they could afford something newer. That refusal is not sentimental. It is rational. What they hold is not just a lease. It is a key to a door the market cannot close behind them. And in New York, that is worth more than almost any other object a person can possess. The rarest luxury in New York is not space. It is being allowed to stay. Level 5 solves the problem of displacement. It does it by making the decision to leave feel like surrendering something you can never get back. But above rent stabilization, there is a different kind of gate, one that money alone cannot open. Level 6, the elite. Strict co-op. $1.5 million to $10 million plus purchase. Prestige at the cost of autonomy. Richard Nixon, former president of the United States, was rejected by a Manhattan co-op board after leaving the White House. He had the money. He had the lawyers. He had held the most powerful office in the world. And still, strangers in a private room decided he was not the kind of person they wanted sharing an elevator. That is the co-op. A board can question your finances, restrict your renovations, block your subletting, and reject you without explaining why. Your net worth cannot override them. In a co-op, you are not simply buying real estate. You are applying to a community that has appointed itself the final authority on who deserves the key. The decision arrives in a letter that does not explain itself. Some classic co-ops have declined in value relative to comparable condos because younger buyers prefer flexibility over gatekeeping. The people who remain understand that. They are not paying for an apartment. The gate is the product. Level 6 solves the problem of unwanted proximity. It does it by turning the act of buying a home into a social audition you can fail regardless of everything you have. Above the co-op, there are no boards, no interviews, no auditions. At the very top, the only qualification is a number most people will never see in their lifetime. Level 7, the Untouchable. Billionaires Row Supertall. $40 million to $250 million plus. Image at the cost of home itself. 432 Park Avenue is 96 stories. The height-to-width ratio is 15:1. It sways in strong wind. By design. Apartments cost tens of millions. The views stretch across the entire city. Residents filed accounts describing more than 1,500 alleged defects. Flooding, elevator failures, mechanical noise audible through walls priced above most people's lifetime earnings. The building that was supposed to be the most perfect address in New York allegedly became one of its most troubled. At 220 Central Park South, Ken Griffin paid $238 million in 2019, close enough to $250 million that the number almost stops sounding like housing. The highest price ever recorded for a residential property in the United States at the time. Many of these apartments are dark most nights. The owners visit occasionally, or not at all. The key exists. The door opens. The lights stay off. At this level, the apartment is not a home. It is a financial instrument, a number in a portfolio using Manhattan as its currency. At the bottom, people sacrifice comfort because they cannot afford more. At the top, people sacrifice home because the apartment was never built for living in. It was built to be owned. Level 7 solves nothing. It purchases an image, and sometimes, at $238 million, that image comes with 1,500 things that do not work. 8 million people live in New York City. The dreamer held a copy of someone else's key. The grinder learned the exact angle to turn theirs. The Manhattan renter unlocked a space the city had to legally redefine. The comfortable opened a door that was never supposed to be residential. The protected holds a key nobody gives up, because nobody can buy what it opens. The elite sat in a room and answered for the right to receive theirs. The untouchable owns a key to a place that is mostly dark. Every level solved one problem. Every level created another. In New York City, a key doesn't just open a door. It tells you what kind of compromise you are allowed to make. And in this city, that price is never just money. If this was useful, subscribe. Every week I break down how the world actually works, not how it's sold to you.